Hey, shalom everyone. I'm Amir Tsarfati from Connect in Galilee, Jezreel Valley, Israel. Today with us, a very important and wonderful guest from not far from here originally, Danny Burmawi. Now, Danny called me on our interview, Pastor Amir, out of respect, and that's the way he chose to call me. But I just want to make it very clear, I'm not an ordained pastor, never was. And so, I respect Danny, and I continued with it. But just so no one will get the wrong impression that I have become a pastor. No, I am not. If anything, I'm just a brother in the Lord. So, but nevertheless, one of the most fascinating podcasts on Islam, Israel, and the West. So let's jump right into our Anker podcast with Danny Burmawi.
Shalom, Pastor Amir. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, good to see you. You told me you've been following this ministry for quite a few years, but I've been following you on X and the things that you posted over the last 2 years. Because to be honest, I only got to know you throughout the war when I became more active on X, and you caught my attention immediately with the clarity in which you speak and the authority that you have, and as well as the simplicity of explaining things that are right there before our very eyes, and a lot of people just can't really see. Danny, you were born in Jordan, then you moved to Lebanon, then you moved to America, where you are right now. Can you please give us a brief introduction of your journey from Jerash to America?
Yes, Pastor Amir. I just started writing in English just after October 7, so I wouldn't expect you to have known me before that. I was living in the Middle East, as you mentioned, and before that, before Lebanon and Jordan. So, as you said, I was born in Jordan in a Muslim family. In 2006, during the Danish cartoonist controversy, if you remember that Danish cartoonist who drew the Prophet of Islam, and a lot of protesting was happening across the Islamic world, I decided to dedicate my life to serve Islam and to defend the Prophet of Islam. And I did that for a year. But then I believe God, the true living God, sent someone my way who introduced me to the New Testament. And after reading about Jesus, I couldn't help myself. I fell in love with the Lord Jesus, and I converted. And I started telling people about my confrontation with Jesus, about that experience. And you can imagine, for someone in Jordan declaring publicly that he's converting to Christianity, leaving Islam, how would that look? So I was not so much wise teenager at the time, and that brought a lot of trouble. So I left Jordan for security reasons to Lebanon, where I lived for the next 15 years, studying and working as an evangelist, church planter, and then just 2 months before October 7, I relocated to the United States after the birth of my child, because I didn't want him to grow up in that environment. And I mean by that, not the environment security-wise. No, I'm talking about the environment where people develop a mentality of slavery, because I believe that God that a society worships determines how does that society look like. And unfortunately, we know that since the Arab world, majority Muslim, the image of God in Islam is distorted, and the people have a distorted understanding of authority, so they keep repeating or creating that image. So they end up with dictators. They cannot help it. It's not something they can control. It is the manifestation of the God they worship. Moved to the United States, October 7 happened, and that changed the trajectory of my life, because I felt, after seeing what happened on the streets of the Western world, that same ideology that I ran away from has crossed the ocean ahead of me and made it to London, to New York, to Toronto. And people were so blind to see what was happening. And at the beginning, I didn't plan to defend Israel or to talk about Israel. My plan was to warn the West about the threat of Islam. But I ended up defending Israel every single day throughout the war.
Yeah.
And why is that?
I guess that's how I got to know you. I mean, because very few defended Israel, and the very few that did caught the attention of the Israelis, obviously. And you were definitely one of those voices.
It happened because I believe the whole conflict, the civilizational conflict that we are witnessing in the West or in Israel, has been reduced to whether you stand with Israel or you stand with Islam. There's no fence, no neutrality, no gray area. It is black or white. It is binary. And that's the reality of it.
Yeah, it's amazing because you would think that crossing the ocean, running away from Lebanon, and certainly from what Hezbollah turned Lebanon into, you would find tolerance and a better understanding of, what Western values are all about in America. And now, I mean, right after the election of Mamdani to mayor of New York, in fact, you get to see that most of those who voted for him are actually non-Muslims. And it seems to me that there is an amazing, cunning way of Islam to find itself into the hearts of non-Muslims in America nowadays. Have you noticed that as well?
Of course. That's why I wrote my book. That's why I try every day to tell people what's going on. I believe that Zohra Mamdani is a symptom. So people are afraid of Zohra Mamdani, but they should be afraid of the root. What led us to Zohra Mamdani? And that is the vacuum that was created in the West, the ideological vacuum. It is, for the past few decades, the West and America in particular, the American society has been invaded with different school of thoughts that was easy or could easily see Islam as a partner, because these ideologies are anti-Western. They look at the West as the reason behind every single problem in the world. The West is a monster. The West is the reason there is poverty, there is violence, there is terrorism. And as a matter of fact, Zahra Mamdani's father, a professor at Columbia University, he is one of the pioneers of this view of the West. In his books, multiple books, he talked about how America is the reason behind the emergence of terrorism, Islamic terrorism. It was the American imperialism. America is the reason or responsible for 9/11. America is almost the great Satan. So this embracing of the same Iranian Islamic view of the West was the result of the post-colonialism studies, the whole Marxist, communist, binary vision of the word, oppressor versus oppressed. And since America is the most powerful nation on earth, that makes America the leader of the oppressors. And of course, in that group, we have Israel, which is an extension of the West. And they look at Israel not as a Jewish state. No, they look at Israel as a Christian white state that is the extension of the colonial West. And the Jews returning to their homeland as a repetition of the European colonialism. And that's how we end up with this alliance between Islam and the left, because both of them are anti-West. This is the simplest, the simplest way to explain what's going on.
Yeah, it's interesting because speaking of colonialism, someone once taught me that you can tell how big the colonialist country is by how many countries speak its language. And I'm thinking about how many countries in the Middle East are speaking Arabic versus how many speaks Hebrew. And I think the answer is pretty clear. Israel is definitely not the colonialist. Someone else is. And so it's certainly not about colonialism. Adding to that, archaeology will tell you we were there way before Islam was even born. Adding to that, the fact that Jewish people would leave much better places and greater places to move to the land of Israel with all the dangers that are in it, but because they know that this is where they belong. And now, since you are a believer of the Old and the New Testament, you can clearly see that it is amazing fulfillment of Bible prophecy of how God will eventually bring back his people from the four corners of the world back to Israel. But you have a very unique view of Islam. A lot of people think Islam is just a religion, but you take it to a different level. You explain that it's not just a religion. Can you elaborate on it?
Sure. There are many definitions of what a religion is. It's like if you go to sociology, there is a definition. Psychology has a different one. But in general, a religion is a set of beliefs, metaphysical beliefs that determine how you live your life. And Christianity is a religion. Judaism is a religion. There is a set of belief, and there is the desire that people would live this way. You, as Christian, you desire that the world, everyone, would follow the teachings of Yeshua. Even in Judaism, they have the Noahide laws, and they pray that everyone in the world would follow this set of belief. Now, the difference between this definition of a religion and Islam is that Islam has an extra element, and that is the ambition to attain political power in order to impose that set of belief on the society. In Christianity, there is no commandment for the church to seek political power to force everyone to live that way. In Judaism, it's limited to the Jews. In Islam, however, the commandment to establish the rule of Allah everywhere is in the Quran, it's in the Hadith, and the view that all other laws are inferior to the law of Allah is the reason for this political ambition. So Islam is not only a religion because of that, because of the political ambition to establish the rule of Allah everywhere.
Yeah, I understand that. When you described your departure from Islam, converting to Christianity, you actually said something very interesting. You said, I did not only convert out of Islam, but I also converted out of Palestinianism. It's a lot of people don't get it, don't understand how the whole the whole cult that was built around the Palestinians and the Palestine is indeed like a religion. Tell us more about that, because people don't get it.
Yeah, Palestine was branded, especially in the West, as a nation state, as an ethnicity, and Palestinians are people who belong to this ethnicity or to this nation state. But in fact, Palestine is more like the Likud party in Israel or the Republican Party in the United States. It's a political party, and you belong to it because it is a political cause more than it is real people and real country. In the 40s of the past centuries, Arabs who even lived in the so-called Palestine, they rejected Palestine. They said, no, this Palestine is a colonial imposition. We don't believe in it. We are an Islamic group of people, and we belong to the Islamic nation, the Islamic empire, which was, of course, the Ottoman for a very long time, and before that, the multiple Islamic caliphates. But in the 60s, Gamal Abdel Nasser and Yasser Arafat, they manufactured, in cooperation with the Bolsheviks or the communists, they manufactured Palestine as a nation state. It has never been a nation state. There was no state called Palestine. But suddenly, Palestine became a thing. And as a Muslim, as an Arab, Jordanian, I followed that religion of Palestine, that political party of Palestine, as long as I was a Muslim. Not because I loved the Palestinians. I didn't care for them, to be honest. And everyone who knows Jordan knows that tension between Jordanians and Palestinians there. But I was supporting Palestine or using Palestine because of religious devotion. Because I was like, okay, since I'm a Muslim, I have to defend the land of Islam. And any land that was ruled by Islam, even for a minute, could not be ruled by non-Muslims ever. And that is how we looked at the Palestine thing. In Islam, not only people have religion, but the land also has a religion. So we convert the land. And the land of Israel has been converted or has been kidnapped by Islam, and it was ruled by Islam. So now the family of that girl, I call it the girl, the land is, it's like what's happening, for example, in Egypt. A Christian girl is kidnapped, converted to Islam by force, and then when her family comes, they want to take her back, they can't. Why? Because she's a Muslim now. The same thing is the land. We hijacked it, we kidnapped it. It became a Muslim. She cannot be married to a non-Muslim according to the Islamic law, and yet the Jews, they want to marry the land. Doesn't work that way. It's our land now. So this is like basically the mentality that I abandoned when I converted from Islam. So I also converted from Palestinianism.
Oh, I never heard that analogy of land being like a girl, and wow, that's pretty amazing to put it in that context. But obviously, those who know history those who go beyond the propaganda narratives that are being pushed by Qatar on Al Jazeera and TikTok and all of that. Once you know history, you know exactly who lived in the land thousands of years before. And you also, if you know history, you also know archaeology, you also know that we have obviously proof to that. But I always tell people that and people don't believe me, but I tell them, look, in the 1920s and 30s, it's the Jews that were called Palestinians, not the Muslims in the land. In fact, the Muslims, as you suggested, they did not want to associate themselves with that name, a name that was given by a pagan Roman Caesar, and named after the Philistines, which are people from the Greek Isles, not anything to do with Muslims. And I always tell people that even the name Palestine is not even a name that an Arab would choose originally, because it's hard to pronounce the letter P. That's why they're always use the F, the Philistine in Philistinian, all of that. It's because it's hard. It's not the original name anyway. That's not what they meant to be. That's what they were forcing themselves to be in order to tackle this whole Israeli or Jewish presence in the land. And that's where now I'm taking you as an Arab Jordanian born to Muslim family, finding Jesus, converting to Christianity, moving all the way to America. And as you attested, suddenly October 7th came and you find yourself not just defending Western values, not just exposing Islam. Now you bring Israel into the picture of what you're going to talk about, what you're going to, write on. And indeed, your book is called Islam, Israel, and the West. And Israel is right there, part of the main title of a book that came out in a very chilling way on October 7, 2025. And it's funny because even my book on Ezekiel, exploring Ezekiel, that was the very day of its publishing, also October 7th. And give us a little bit of the highlights of that book, because this is not just Danny Burmawi speaking about Islam, speaking about Western values. Israel now is a huge part of what you are dealing with. And the reason why I'm asking Danny is this. Look, there are a lot of Muslims. They're not Christians. They never converted to Christianity. There are quite a few Muslims that from the UAE that are very active on social media, and they are also promoting, different values than radical Islam, and they also, in a way, to some degree, defend Israel. And I think you and I know some of them.
Sure.
But none of them is seeing the need to address the Islamic problem. They only see the need to address the radical Islam as a problem. You, however, the name of your book is not Radical Islam, Israel, and the West. You talk about Islam as a religion in general, and not just about the radical part of it, because the way you see it is a bit different than them. So take us into your mind when you write such a thing. What is it that you decided to write about that you want everybody to know?
Well, we can keep pretending that it is some group that hijacked Islam, a fringe, just some radical interpretation. And we will keep ending up where we started, just in a cycle that will never end. Because as long as you are not addressing the roots and you are only talking about the fruit, then nothing is going to change. I don't want to fall into that trap. I wanted to explain to people that it's not the fruit, it's the root. And the root is Islam as a religion. And even though Muslims don't want to admit that in Islam it's embedded the desire to take over the world, to make it Islamic, to replace the man-made law with Allah's law, someone has to say it. And I'm not going to make the same mistakes the United States government and the UK government or many governments around the world they made after 9/11 by absolving Islam or exonerating Islam from terrorism and just laying it on the back of radical Islam or radical groups. No, I'm going to say it as it is, the truth. I believe that Islam is the problem. And this is not an attack on Muslims. Absolutely not. You just mentioned that some Muslims even defend Israel. This is a call for Muslims to admit the truth that there is some problematic doctrines in Islam, and unless they address them, unless they talk about them, they will keep hiding behind their fingers, and Islam will keep producing more and more organizations like Hamas, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Boko Haram, Shabab, Taliban, etc. And the world will keep suffering from lone wolf attackers in Europe and America. And they want to convince the world that, Israel, it's a territorial dispute. It has nothing to do with Islam. It's not a religious war. It is just, resistance, freedom fighting. So Israel is the litmus test, in my opinion. Israel is, if you see Israel as a religious war, you will understand the future of the West. If you look at it as a territorial dispute, and you keep thinking that, we don't have a religious war in the West too, then you have already lost the war. So that is what I wanted to show in the book. And I used Lebanon as an example of what happens when you misunderstand Islam. The Christian Lebanese, they misunderstood, and they said, okay, let's coexist with Islam. And for the past century, 100 years, Lebanon or Christian Lebanese kept losing and losing and losing. And today, there are some minority struggling to survive in their own country. However, the Jewish state decided from the beginning, we don't want to be ruled by Islam. We don't even want to be ruled by Christianity. We don't want to be ruled by anyone. We want to be ruled by ourselves, self-determination. And because Israel did that, Israel survived, Israel thrived, and that is the only way to survive when it comes to Islamic caliphate. Because look at history. In 1907, the Jewish people built the city of Tel Aviv, 40 years before the establishment of the state of Israel. They developed the port of Haifa. They built many institutions. And we don't read in history any objection to that. They were welcomed. Actually, Arabs were migrating to the Jewish areas to work there. So what happened exactly that suddenly turned Israel into a colonial state? Well, what happened is the fall of the caliphate in 1924. When Islam had its empire and the Jews were seen as a group of people living under the umbrella of Islam, they were welcome. No problem. But after the fall of the Ottoman Empire, the Islamic Caliphate, and the Jews decided they want sovereignty, at that point, they became a colonial power because sovereignty
Wow.
on an Islamic land for non-Muslims is not allowed. And that's how we ended up with this Arab-Israeli conflict. If Bibi Netanyahu tonight, and I always say this, converts to Islam, if he just goes on the national TV and say, Ya Shadu la ilaha illallah, and that within minutes, the Arab-Israeli conflict would end.
Wow.
I'm not talking about all Israel, just the leader, just the king. If he's a Muslim, I promise you, Muslims from Iraq, from Saudi Arabia, from Morocco, from Egypt, they will be giving Bibi Netanyahu lands as gifts. Oh, come take
Hmm.
this more. So it was never about the land. It has always been about sovereignty and the fact that non-Muslims are ruling themselves on a land that is seen as an Islamic land.
Mm. So what do you have to say to people who can claim, look, there are Arab countries, Muslim countries that have peace with Israel, and they are okay with Israel, and they're still Muslims, and what would you tell them? I mean, they'll brand you as an extremist, I guess, with your
Sure,
view.
sure.
So what would you answer them?
Well, the United Arab Emirates is not an Islamic country. It is a Western country because it has imported the West into its home, but they kept the Islamic shell. You know, it's like the culture is like, okay, we are Islamic. We have the call to prayer on public. But as a matter of fact, they are as Islamic as France. They have nothing to do with Islam. So, and it's a good thing. I'm not saying this is a bad thing. All the Islamic countries, they failed to apply Islam. And actually, don't take that from me. Take it from Muslims themselves. All Muslims around the world, they realize that no country is applying Islam the right way. And they keep always whining about that. And it's like criticizing their countries. Like, no one is applying Sharia, no one is applying Islam. Of course they don't, because it's not humane, it's not natural to live under Sharia law. So Somalia, some part of Somalia, they tried. Afghanistan, even when Saudi Arabia was applying Sharia, it was not the full Sharia, to be honest. So it's not the guy who criticizes Islam. I'm not the problem. I'm just analyzing. I'm just making the diagnosis. That's it. I'm not. Coming up with any new ideas. Muslims who leave to the West, who migrate to the West, actually, if you know them, you know that what I'm about to say is true. They say our countries are failed and they are hellholes because they don't obey Allah. Because we have been swayed away from the true path of Allah. So we are moving to the West, and we will try to create a society that is obedient to Allah. Because we have freedom in the West to do so. So that's why they exploit the Western freedom, Western values, in order to
So you claim that
establish.
they moved to the West. You claim that they moved to the West to create a more genuine Islamic rule than the countries they fled from. That's what you're saying.
Sure. Oh yeah, that's absolutely right. But I'm I'm not saying that all Muslims who migrate to the West, they go with the intention that they want to take over the West. That is a ridiculous claim I would never make. The absolute majority of Muslims who go to the West, they are after what everybody around the world is after: a better economy, better future for their children. But the problem is that they are conditioned to always side with the few who have the intention to replace the West, to replace its constitution. I'm talking about the Muslim Brotherhood. I'm talking about different Islamic organizations who are controlling the Muslim population using Islam. They will be saying to Muslims, this is how you serve Allah. This is how you expand Islam. Vote for this person. Vote against that person. So the absolute majority of Muslims, they don't wake up in the morning thinking, oh, we want to take over the West. No, of course not. But using Islam, the political Islamists, as they are called, I don't believe this is like a right term to describe them. They are true Muslims. But let's say the political Islamists, they exploit the religious feelings in order to control the Muslim population, in order to gain more ground in the West.
It's very interesting because it's kind of an oxymoron. You flee the Muslim country in order to find better future and more opportunities for your children, and then you are conditioned to side with those that wants to turn that place to where you actually ran away from. So it's interesting how it's a vicious cycle,
It is
basically.
just, yeah, it is, because you look at people who throw themselves in the Mediterranean, swimming toward the shores of freedom on the other side, in Europe, and the moment their feet touches the European infidel land,
Yeah.
they start yelling, apply Sharia law. We want Sharia law. It's like,
Yes.
what's going on here? It is that their belief that Islam is not correctly applied or being lived in their countries. It is similar to communism. Whenever you ask anybody who believes in communism, it's like, why are you pushing for a failed ideology that have proven to be very destructive? Their answer would be, oh, communism has never been applied correctly. It's like, okay, so what are you going to do? It's like their understanding of the human nature is ridiculous. So, yeah.
That's true. And that's why I believe, and I'm sure you do too, that much of what we're talking about eventually is a spiritual thing. Because there's no other way to describe that stupidity, that blindness, that complete sheer cluelessness, unless it's what I call strong delusion. It's really is a spiritual thing, because I cannot understand how anyone in the West find anything good in communism or Islam when they see the fruit thereof. But I cannot also see how anyone from communist countries or Muslim countries can find any better way to apply those things in Western world and get better results. And so obviously, I believe it is definitely something deeper and more spiritual. And I think that's where your faith kicks in, because you know the way, the truth, and the life. And how much is it that how much is your faith, um how much is it being applied to the way you write and the way you understand the situation in our world today? I mean, we can talk forever about psychology, about values, culture, but at the end, people need the truth, the way, and the life, and that is, of course, our Messiah. So when you talk about all these things, how much that is taking place in your message?
Actually, when I started doing this political analysis and commentary, I was attacked by many of my older friends and colleagues, and who would be like, "You're an evangelist. Why would you defile yourself with politics?" And they still not happy with what I'm doing, and some of them considered me to be an apostate.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that, as you said, that it is a spiritual battle, and that spiritual battle is not confronted or fought only in proselytization. It's also with knowledge and education and uh, exposing the lies. And I believe this is what Jesus did.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus, in it looks like his mission is all about destroying self-righteousness, because self-righteousness is at the root of all problems. That was his problem with the religious leaders. It's like, you
It's the
think
root
you're
of all
better than every...
religions. Yeah.
Of course,
Yeah.
yeah. And when I look at the West today, the West is on a trajectory of self-destruction because of self-righteousness.
Mm-hmm.
The whole pro-Hamas, pro-Palestine movement since October 7, it is about self-righteousness. They think, oh, we are better than you. We are standing with the weak. Regardless of facts, regardless of context, they label whomever they want as weak, and then that is the right side of history. And this needs to be exposed.
Mm-hmm.
It is some kind of compensation. All this, I'm sorry, but all this transsexualism, the gender theory, post-colonialism, white guilt, colonial guilt, it all based in this self-righteousness. Our own attempt to redeem ourselves. You know, we don't need Jesus. We don't need a redeemer to redeem us from our sins. We're going to redeem ourselves by destroying ourselves. This is the self-mortification. It is the same way when people used to torture themselves to
Right.
gain favor with God.
Yeah.
And the West is sacrificing itself on the altar of guilt and destroying the greatest civilization that exists on the planet because of a spiritual stupidity. So I see myself as someone who is in the field of ministry doing this by, first of all, I'm trying to protect the civilization that was born out of my current faith from the destructive ideology of my former faith.
Yes,
So,
exactly.
so this is, for me, this is spiritual. Of course, it is spiritual.
Yeah.
It's all about whether we rely on ourselves to be saved or we believe in a savior.
Yeah.
And the West today reflects, for me, reflects the days when Israel was at peace in the Bible, and they were diverting from worshiping God to worshiping idols.
They
And
wanted to
when
be
that
like the
happened,
others.
exactly, and when that
Yeah,
happens, we know that Israel has a different responsibility
absolutely.
because it is the people
Yeah.
of God. So God would come and, okay,
Yeah.
time for the exile.
Not
And
true.
I
Yeah.
look at the West today
Yeah.
and I see that God is telling them, all
Yeah.
right, you're worshiping idols, so it's
Yeah.
time for an exile.
Yeah.
And
And Danny, so it's kind of easy to distinguish between left and right, conservative and liberal, but you and I are witnessing in the past few months, maybe half a year or so, that even within the conservative world, we see growing self-righteousness in attempt to blame the Jews, ostracize Israel, or framing it as if you support Israel, it's Israel first and not America first, and all of that nonsense. And so so now we're finding ourselves not only having to deal with the stupidity of the liberal progressive left, but now we have to deal with allies on the conservative camp that cannot even see things the way they should. Do you also see that from there,
Sure.
from wherever you are in the US?
Who doesn't? Who doesn't? There are different reasons why this is happening. The genuine among them, for me, looks like the older son who's not happy with the prodigal son. The self-righteousness is there. I'm talking about the honest among them, but none of them are good faith player. I believe that the majority among the people on the right who are taking this stance against Israel is they are motivated by different things. I didn't used to believe that they're paid by Qatar or Turkey but unfortunately, I don't see any other reason for the majority among them, because what they are doing is absolutely crazy. Even denying a genocide against Christians in Nigeria in order to solve Islamic Jihad. So apparently we're dealing with something that goes beyond the fact that they're not happy with the United States supporting Israel and they want to focus on America. It's more than that. But some of them too, they just see Israel as a liability because of what happened since October 7th. So they love Israel, but they wanted to drop Israel because they don't want to defend genocide. So, as I said, different reasons why we are seeing this, but basically, what we are witnessing is the natural result of the indoctrination that was taking place in the higher education field in America for the past 20 years. We have different group of ideologues and people with different interest and agenda pouring billions of dollars into the US education system, controlling the curriculum, raising a generation that hates America. Forget Israel. Start with America. They hate themselves. They hate the West. And Israel is just an extension of the father they hate. And we ended up with people on the right capitalizing on the same thing, because if they don't do this, they will lose, because everybody is being led or controlled to go in a certain direction, and they feel like we need to capitalize on this, otherwise we will be irrelevant. So it is very complicated. It's not just something superficial or just a few people who are repeating this. No, this is just the natural result of years and years of ideological indoctrination taking place in the West.
Danny, we're running out of time, and I just wanted everyone to know that one of the things I like about you is the knowledge that you have, and I think that's the problem that people have today, is that they don't want to go deeper and understand things. They are staying so shallow, and therefore TikTok is becoming their main source of education. They like it short, they like it catchy, and then they parrot all these slogans and propaganda. And that's why I want to
I wouldn't be
encourage
doing this if it wasn't. I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for the $7,000 the Mossad paid me before this episode. You know, it's like, and every post I make, it's the Mossad paying me $7,000. So don't be deceived with my knowledge. Or no, it's just $7,000. It's crazy. It's crazy. People are not willing to listen to anything I'm saying or you're saying or anyone is saying because $7,000. So, yeah, as
Yeah.
you were saying, I'm sorry for interrupting you, but it's like I had to mention the $7,000, and don't forget to send me the check after this.
Well, welcome to the club. That's exactly what people say about me. I guess we would become millionaires by now if every time we defended Israel, we got something from the Mossad. Trust me, Israel maybe is doing well financially, but that's not what we do with people that defend us. So, no, we're not being paid. And I know that for those that are being paid, it's hard to believe that others aren't. First of all, I want to thank you for being with us today. And I want to encourage people to go to dannyburmawi.com to get to know more of what you do and also support your work. And I also want to encourage people to get Danny's book, Islam, Israel, and the West. Fascinating book that will again expand your horizons and get you to understand the situation in a deeper, in a much more, I guess, full of facts and deep understanding of everything. And it's not just shallow slogans that you get elsewhere. Danny, thank you for joining me from the United States.
Thank you
God
so
bless
much.
you.
Thank you.
God bless your family, your child, and join us again in the future. And until then, guys, thank you for being with us on our Anker podcast. Please watch, share, comment, and forward it to others. And subscribe and like this channel. And again, I want to encourage you, get Danny's book and follow him on social media. Thank you, everyone. God bless you, and shalom.